I'm wondering if this is the Reform Jersey headquarters, the new one, now that they've reorganised themselves. It's got all the slogans, look, all the things they want to do, the reforms they want to do, they're all here, all encapsulated in one property. So it would be an ideal place to have the headquarters for the whole island. But I doubt if that's going to happen. But I'm wondering if John Young, during his final 2 years, is going to finally deal with this extraordinary scandal. It is a big scandal, a beautiful house, a beautiful good location in the countryside, a most desirable dwelling. Why can't he get it back into use as a dwelling? Never mind what's been going on. It's a sordid history, lots of people probably behaving very daft. And also the parish, why doesn't the parish get to grips with it? The parish could take this property on, never mind the history. Get in there, sort it out. This is a house for several families could live here, and it's an absolute tragedy, and it's an absolute scandal, and it makes a mockery of all the rubbish they talk, these politicians talk. It makes a mockery of what they say. Here's a worked example, a house left empty, several units of accommodation, and nobody seems to give a damn. Nobody wants to sort it. See, this is one of the many scandals of Jersey, isn't it? This is the back of the Folly Inn. I don't know what used to be here. And this is, occasionally these are used as workshops, just opposite here. The Folly Studios, artist studios, no problem with that. But this should be such a wonderful little area, shouldn't it here? It should be. And what a disaster for years and years. Neglect. You know, we go on it like it's an uncaring society. But there's thousands of people supposedly care about such things. And yet, it goes on. Look at this wonderful, fabulous setting. Fabulous, historic setting. Actually, a fabulous place. It was. People lived here. Logan Finney lived here. A known smuggler. 1765 he came here. He was here for decades. His family was here for decades. It ought to be a little exhibit in its own right, because it's got actual real history. Here we are, here are little bits of real history. Tom Passé, they love Tom Passé, but they won't spend the money. For those who can remember, the Folly Inn. Look at it, I mean, it's just magic little, you couldn't create this. You get 30 architects, lock them in a room and say, produce that building now, today. They couldn't do it. This has grown organically over centuries. Look at it. What a shame, what a tragedy. Why isn't somebody living there? Why isn't it a little business? You know, they want to destroy it. They want it to fall down. John Young, if you do anything in your final 2 years, resurrect this building. Well, this is the long shot of picturesque Greve de Lec. You can see it's all very pretty, but of course, nobody's proposing to cover the, they love the emotive phrase, cover it in concrete. This beach will never be covered in concrete. All this will stay. And that little cluster of buildings that you can see over there, basically, I feel sure, will be replicated by whatever proposal goes on. And up there's the barracks, for those that can see the barracks. There's been little clusters of buildings for here for hundreds of years. And this place, of course, this little picturesque bay, was of course a great centre for smuggling.
Yes.
Even as late as the 1850s, as the UK historian, I don't know how he's still allowed to show his face in this island since he's from the UK, daring to teach, Doug, I think his name is Doug, Dig deep, Doug. He refers to the smugglers that used to go out of here. Well, of course, he's talking about the mid-19th century, which is very late for smuggling. But of course, the railway had been built in the United Kingdom by then, so all they had to do was get their smuggled goods over to Weymouth, put it on the Red Star and send it straight up to London on Brunel's great wonderful railway. So, you know, it was sort of smuggling, but not as we know it today. It wasn't like the finance industry. It wasn't that sort of smuggling. You go down, knock on the door in the finance centre and ask them about the smuggling. They'll tell you to go away and multiply. Well, here we are. This is Grève de Lec, the scene of the next 7 Years' War. Yes, never mind, there's some idiot trying to wave at the camera. Don't worry, we'll ignore those. But it's interesting, isn't it, that this will be the next battle. The planning battle, you see, because it's a little hamlet of buildings, but the NIMBYs are already digging in. Even though it looks like a little cluster of houses now, they don't want it to be called houses. There's a house in the middle, look, as you can see, a traditional, if this idiot person would get out of the way, there's a house in the middle with traditional chimney stacks on it, and even the previous war, look, there's a memento of the previous war left there, a machine gun post, so that the UK planners, if they attempt to come here, can be repelled. Anybody from the UK can be repelled because there's a machine gun post there left over from the last confrontation. So this could be the last stand of the Jersey Patriots, couldn't it? To stop any housing on this site. I mean, it's the island has a desperate housing shortage, but we don't want them here. It's a familiar tale. Well, this is the other side of the great war yet to come, where the Plymouth volunteers will be out in force. They'll be put back in uniform, and probably they'll be lying down in true Greenham Common protest style to stop the diggers, of course. I wonder what the protests were when that building over there was built. The Prince of Wales, look, right on the headland, overlooking the same sea. It's the same sea that you get down there. It's the same one. Now, there's a cluster of buildings there. Was there a cluster of buildings there? Now, of course, here on the other side of the road, these little fishermen's cottages. Of course, they were never fishermen's cottages. What was here was a nightclub, a huge thing, which used to be a great centre of jollification all along here. That was demolished, and behind there, you can't see it on this shot, there are more buildings. Perhaps I'll take a peek. And up here, there's little jolly buildings. There was a little pub there which I used to go in. Everybody wore sandals then. I didn't stand out. I didn't get people saying, "Oh my God, aren't you weird wearing sandals?" That was, everybody wore them in those days, but that's gone. I don't know what it was called. And look, the army was here. Of course, they were supposed to be keeping an eye on the smugglers, no doubt. That would be a good idea. I think they ought to have them down by the International Finance Centre. They ought to have barracks so that the army could be placed outside all these finance centre activities to see that they're not up to any mischief, because that's what they used to do. But then, of course, smuggling was much more a working class activity then. It wasn't nice middle class accountants and lawyers. So a different social context, you see. This is life as we don't know it. This is an understanding. But anyway, this little social conflict is going to rage for years and years ahead. The desperate housing shortages, as I've said, but we can't put houses, and we certainly can't put houses for people with social needs overlooking the sea. Oh, heaven forbid. Another part of Grève de Lec, of course, is the old mill, the Moulin de Lec. It's always puzzled me about this place. It's a water mill, presumably for grinding corn. But who did they grind the corn for? Obviously, this is a very old building. I presume this is 17th century, 18th century, origins, early 18th century. the watermill, but who was it for? Because if there were, you've got to have enough people to buy the corn, haven't you? Did they bring their corn here from the fields? I can understand they could grow it. No doubt our UK historian, Doug, when he's not blowing his whistle, can tell us what it was for. There was obviously a few houses over here. There's still a few there now, but they were pubs. They were houses, cottages. But there has to be an economy, doesn't there? There has to be some sort of activity. Now, tourism is dying around here, so all this land has to have alternative uses. That's the problem. So the cafe across there, they can keep it, they can preserve it, they can have a museum cafe, I suppose, but how many museums can an island support? There has to be some genuine activity. If it's housing, which is a genuine activity, but of course those people have to be working somewhere. Now, they won't be working in many of these businesses, because I don't suppose it'll be many years before this little pub is returned to its use as a house. But we shall have to see. These are all problems for John Young to sort out in his remaining 18 months in office, and I rather suspect he won't deal with any of them very well. Well, I think this is my final look at Greve de Lec. Of course, we've got this solitary tower here now. I don't know if this is one of Lord Conway's creations. He probably didn't need planning permission to build an obelisk like that. I presume, of course, it was intended, partly, to keep out the infidel French invaders, but also to keep an eye on those dastardly smugglers who used to smuggle in and out of here. Of course, it wasn't just sending stuff out. It was just like the modern finance industry. So ought to be a plaque on that building. This is a memorial to the smuggling. And but of course, there was a hotel here somewhere. And now, of course, we've got these apartments, or whatever they are, just beyond on this enormous car park. I don't know if the car park is kept in perpetuity. I don't know. But of course it'll all be cyclists soon, because the island, the motor car, is being eliminated under the grand plan. So there'll be a tiny little space, so they'll have another big piece of land, and they won't know what to do with it, because there won't be any tourists coming out here. We've already looked at these from the front, these little bijou fishermen's cottages, which used to be an entertainment complex. And this used to be a hotel. And obviously that won't be a hotel much longer. So, this is how things change. But unfortunately, the mind of the population is steeped in nostalgia, wanting to keep yesterday, that which is yesterday. We want to keep things which are, wasn't it good when we were children? And our fathers and their children, our grandfathers, and what they used to do when they used to go gathering seaweed. You can only take so much of this stuff, can you? Here we are in the 21st century, and we have to address these problems now. And one of the needs for Jersey is a desperate shortage of housing, and these are sites for housing. People used to live here.